It's Kyle here, and today I'll be reviewing The Rise of Athens, the story of the world's greatest civilization by author Anthony Everitt. As the title implies, this is a non-fiction history book about Athens. It specifically covers the time period in ancient Greece where Athens begins to rise from basically, a typical Greek settlement that doesn't really stand out amongst the other city-states in Greece to become the dominant voice of Greece, opposition to Persia, the rise of the democracy, the creation of democracy, and then it also kind of explores all the way up to the end where Athens begins to lose its place as the dominant state in Greece and kind of falls to the wayside and almost becomes like a second tier player in the Greek world and the ancient world in general. I found this book really interesting. I never read a history book just about ancient Greece. I've read several about the Roman Republic and Empire. Probably the closest I've came to reading a book about ancient Greece is a couple biographies I've read about Alexander the Great. And really Alexander the Great's, his rise, at that point Athens had already kind of fell to like a second tier power. So I really hadn't read much about exploring why Athens had emerged as such a leading voice in the ancient world, how democracy developed there, all that type of stuff. And I really enjoyed this book. It was very interesting. I really enjoyed the way the author laid it out. He even explained one of his writing choices when he was doing the foreword to the book, where he basically mentioned he was going to assume that people didn't know the history of this topic. And so when he was doing chapters, he was doing it chronological in order that way. So he wouldn't allude to stuff that hasn't happened yet in case the reader wasn't aware of that. So that way it'd almost read a little bit like a fiction book where there'd be almost like plot twists where you'd be reading about some sort of controversy or political movement or war, and you might not know how it's going to conclude. And by him not alluding to stuff in the future, it really does keep you kind of turning the page like, well, I wonder, what's going to happen with this situation. So I really enjoyed it. It kind of gave it a little bit more of a fiction feel to when you were reading it. He also does a great job of kind of exploring the characters that are involved in the various events throughout ancient Athens and kind of really making them feel like people you actually know instead of figures in just a history book. So he really explores their personality, what made them do what they did, why did they push for democracy, or why were they figures that were opposed to democracy, why they made certain decisions in regard to conflict, in regard to Persia or Sparta or other Greek city-states, the various factions they belonged to, their background, did they grow up in a poor family, a rich family, a religious family, how their parents shaped them. He explored a lot of that aspect. A lot of times in history books typically get overlooked. So I really enjoyed him kind of making the figures feel like real people. It was a very interesting book. I would say, like I said, if you enjoy, if you've read books about the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic, and you enjoyed that, but you've never really read much about ancient Greece, I think I would really recommend you reading this book, because a lot of the stuff that happened in ancient Athens really led to and helped influence what came later with the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire, and really several other vastly important historical developments like the rise of democracy, which Athens deserves a lot of credit for. If you typically don't like nonfiction books, but you're interested in reading some history stuff, this might be a good book to read, because as I said, the author purposely lays it out to kind of leave stuff unknown as you read until you get to that specific moment. So there's kind of like story elements like a fiction book. But I do want to warn you, he does get into a lot of historical details, so if you're not really into history, this probably is not the book for you, because I think you really have to be interested in that period of history and kind of wanting to learn more about history to really read and enjoy this book. But if you like history, but you typically don't like reading nonfiction books, this might be a good history book to explore. So I definitely would recommend it. The Rise of Athens, the story of the world's greatest civilization by Anthony Everitt. I really enjoyed it. Hope you'll check it out. Comment section below, let me know if there's any good nonfiction books that you've read lately that you'd recommend I read. As always, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the support. Happy reading, and I'll see you the next time.